That's what you get whilst operating a company that's operational tooling being utilized in over 70 countries. It's the company, I'm the founder, I want to be there. But I don't expect the team to pull in the same amount of hours or anything. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, Rob, head of brand, commercial partnerships, sales, operations, and OCD.
Very much, especially when it comes to setting up and recording. So for those out there listening, it took us 25 minutes to get set up in 3 locations. Ish. All right. Well, I'm excited because I always say I'm excited when we get these things started, right? This is another episode of Hospitable. Hospitable is a podcast powered by Omniboost where we attempt to explore how to make hospitality more human through technology. And it's really exciting because today we have Kees Zorge, the founder, CEO of Omniboost, which you've, if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't listened to the first episode, the intro to podcast, take a listen, get a little bit more idea of who Kees is. Kees and I met over 3 years ago because of where we are today. So we're sitting in New York City. We're at the Belgian American Chamber of Commerce, which is where we have offices. 2020, was it? You went through the program?
I think so.
Yeah, so 2020, Benelux Catalyst program, all virtual. Kees. Unfortunately, you couldn't make it over here for the in-person. I was leading a sales selling in the US.
So actually you showed up being Rob with a tank top, and I definitely remember that a couple of, participants of the Catalyst were
Was I in a tank top during the Catalyst workshop?
Yeah.
Are you sure? I was in a tank top the first internal
session when we
with Mikey, with Mikey and Serna and everything. I'm pretty sure that I would not have worn a tank top.
But then still, you made quite of an impression.
that I did.
You still had the bun.
Yeah, so I had the bun.
Man was there.
The bun, the beard, all those things. So we met through the Catalyst program 3 years ago and immediately hit it off.
Yeah.
Very engaged session. We chatted afterwards. And since then, I joined the organization, doing some consulting work, helping out here and there, doing some fun things, but also became a strategic advisor to the business. And it was really fun to, whenever you came to New York, we'd get together and we'd talk shop and strategy and business. And there was something that always resonated with me that you held very dear to you. And it's actually what we did our podcast for The Bare Necessities, which is my personal podcast that I ran, still do. You came on, it was your first ever podcast experience.
Lost my podcast virginity there.
So first ever podcast, Casey came on and we talked about this thing, this thread that really attracted me to you as the founder and your energy, which is a willingness to serve, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me, why has the willingness to serve or that servant leadership model, what about that struck you, and how and why has it become the ethos of your business leadership mantra?
It wasn't so much about the soft side of things, or leading with anything only with empathy or whatever, but I truly believe that you can only lead a squad of people, if you will, an organization or whatever you want to call it, if you are intrinsically willing to serve your team. What we call within our leadership team, you've been part of it, is that we actually talk about your tour of duty. You cannot expect behavior, work, movement from people if you're not willing to do so yourself. So, and it's not so much about that the results count, but if you truly want to lead people, you need to be willing to be there in the trenches with them. It's good times, work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
On the flip side of things, whilst doing the leadership and the servant leadership and the lead by example, we still expect that the entire team is working on the job until the job is done. So you actually lead with the empathy part or help people out, but you also expect them to deliver whatever it takes.
Yeah, and when you talk about that tour of duty, I think it's really important. It's really easy for you to want to be in leadership, for you to grow into leadership, for you to become a leader. But I think one of the things you notice as leaders, what tends to happen, the farther away that you come from the front lines and the farther you are in that leadership path, you sometimes forget that connection to the tour of duty, the connection to what is it that your teams in place are set up to do, right? From
Correct.
frontline to operations to back of house or back office to anything in between. Every employee at the organization, at any organization, is looking to make an impact, right? They want to do their job. They want to do it well. Some of people,
Obviously, yeah.
yeah. And some people do it for, they do it to grow. They take a job with the opportunity that they are going to use that experience to the next thing and next thing. Some people find, their zone of genius and their passion, and they stay in that role.
Mhm.
Some people are still figuring it out. And then there's also people that take jobs that they know they can do well, and they do that because they can clock in, clock out, and then have their life outside. And you need all those types of people in an organization. And I think it's really easy for leaders
Correct.
to forget that not everyone's like them.
True. So that's a mistake that I still frequently make. And luckily, I've got a team surrounding me who's making me quite well aware that not everybody shares the same values and whatever, so and whatnot. So what you were talking about or referencing is you need to take into consideration that there are different traits of people within your organization. I'm also not necessarily stating that the servant leadership model is the model. I truly believe that all kinds of models will work. But right now, yeah, we're having the discussion or the conversation about Omniboost. And with regards to Omniboost, our DNA, I'm a firm believer in leadership as a servant leadership, doing the tour of duties. Be aware that you've got different people. So what I needed to learn as a founder, and you know me, I'm all over the freaking place. So at some point, I need to respect reporting lines. For me, difficult work. Titles, not a conversation that I really want to be in. But I do need to understand that that's part of running a business. But simultaneously, Omniboost is Omniboost. And that's what I expect from my leaders, my leadership team, to convey and show to the entire team.
Yeah, and I think that's really unique because there's different ways to lead, and there's millions of manuals out there, and what works for one company might not work for another.
Yeah.
And, everyone tries to stand on a hill and my way is the way. But I think when we think about servant leadership when done right, the idea behind it is, as a leader, while you are involved in making really tough decisions and you're looking at the wider picture, and sometimes you're looking not just what's happening today, but what's happening tomorrow, what's happening 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line.
Mm-hmm.
It can be hard to remember what it's like to do the day-to-day and what it is. And so to me, servant leadership really comes down to, we need to be thinking as leaders 3, 6, 9, 12 years. 12 months down the road, like we're in the process of looking at how do we get through Q3 into Q4, Q4 into Q1, so on and so forth. But we can't forget, what do we do day to day that makes us unique? Well, we talk about the Omniboost DNA. What do we do day in and day out that makes Omniboost who it is? And one of those things is, and we talk about our mission, is to give creativity back to humans.
Yeah, and time.
Yeah, and it's the time to be creative, right?
Yeah, correct.
And I think that's a really impactful thing when we talk about this podcast. The idea behind it is, how do we make the hospitality experience more human through technology? And for us, from my perspective, it firmly is, we want to make humans more, give them time back, lessening things that we can control, like financial reporting and reconciliation, those things that we do with our integrations.
Data unification.
So all those things, so that they can be more creative on, how do we make the customers delighted? How does this help when the customer checks in and checks out?
The funny thing is that at some point you run the risk of forgetting to instill that feeling or keep that feeling within your own company. So you're totally focused on the customer side of things, and at some point you run the risk of forgetting your core strength of your company. That's your people.
Yeah.
And I want to reflect back on what you said. Whilst doing or taking the approach of a servant leadership, it doesn't state that at some point you can't make a tough decision. If need be, I'll make the tough decision. And at that point, it won't be a democracy because a decision needs to be made. But then still, excuse my French, if I fuck up, I'll be there in the trenches and taking care of the shit that I created, whilst we're expecting my team to be part of that.
I think it's something we talk about a lot, and I vibe with this a lot, is that the idea of accountability and extreme ownership is that sometimes it's really easy, especially the bigger companies, there's the adage that shit rolls downhill, right? And you can always pass the buck. And I think servant leadership is really about whatever decisions that we make as a leadership team, if they don't get executed or they're the wrong decision, that we own up to that and that we get in the trenches to help fix it. Because we can't expect people, our team, our employees, our lifeblood, who are not involved in those decisions to always fix it. Because sometimes they aren't the ones to fix it.
And correct. And what we learned, what we heard about coming from our own team, that they were basically second guessing why we made a couple of decisions. I think they're allowed to. We, as a leadership team, more specifically, I need to learn to explain the why as why we're doing things. Unfortunately, I'm not clairvoyant, so not every decision that I make is by definition the right one. And I think I fuck up on more times than I would like to account for. But then still, that's the truth. That's being an entrepreneur or being in business or leading a company. What I also like, what you were mentioning about the extreme ownership and accountability. Remember whilst we were here with Romano and Marta, and we had a conversation about accountability going up and down the chain. Good book, by the way, Extreme Ownership. That Romano approached me and then he stated like, Kees, it's so cool that you are willing to do the job and take meetings on our behalf. And definitely, Kees, we favor this. But if you do the handover, please do the handover correctly or just don't do the meeting. I was like, crap. So at some point, that's what I like. Give me the feedback.
Yeah, I think, but that starts with empowerment, right? And I think it's something that I talk a lot about in different panels and stuff that I do on the side, as you know, having spent years in recruitment, is how to attract and retain millennial and more importantly, Gen Z talent. As we think about, for those that don't know out there, Romano is on our US commercial sales team as well as the Europe sales team. He actually leads a lot of our commercial clients on the PMS side. And the fact that he's willing to step up to you, me, whoever, and talk through those things and share, hey, totally love that you're able to get in the trenches with us, but making sure if you do, just because you're the leader, you don't skip steps. Because it's that process. If we don't hold each other accountable to the process and we just do things and come in and out, we affect the flow of what our teams are able to do to our customers. And it's really important to think about Omniboost. We're a platform, right? We are a source agnostic platform. We have 1 million different partners, and we help partners connect to other partners so they can, at the end of the day, support hotels and
Ladies
restaurants.
Not yet 1 million. We're approaching, but...
We're approaching. So we're helping these different customers delight the end user, which is in the hospitality space, restaurants, it's hotels, all these things.
Hostels.
And it's really easy for us as the platform in the middle who is helping make sure that all these things get connected to save these teams time and give them creativity back to forget like what the end result is. So if we make a mistake and we hand it over and then it's not able to get fixed, there's a downhill effect to our partners and then eventually the end user and then eventually the customer who goes to whatever hotel or restaurant
the company immediately.
World.
So that's why I am so dreadful of leading based on authority or power. And yes, at some point you need to show some authority, but I'd rather use the word mandate than authority. Because for me, authority has a negative ring to it. And I totally agree with you. The end result, what counts, is delivering the hospitality or the time or the essence back to the end user. But if we do not take care of things internally, no way, in frickin' hell, we're gonna take care of the end result. Let's make our customers happy.
Yeah, and that's, I think if we look at today's day and age, when we look at, there's a lot of stuff out there, and obviously the bigger the company is, things change, right? Culture and process and reporting lines and leadership changes as you scale.
Well, you see me struggling with that.
Yeah.
Now that the company is growing, I also understand that you can't be there day in, day out with a team, but at least be mindful and listen.
Yeah, I think, and I remember I've worked in, I've ran my own companies to working in larger organizations, and I love like where we're at as an organization, and the time that I joined very had a reason and a place. But I remember when I worked in some of the big organizations, and especially early in my career, whenever a senior VP or managing director came to town, the first thing they would always ask us as the sales and recruiting team, hey, we want to be talking to your clients. We want to be there with you, but we don't want to lead. We want to inject into the conversation. We want you to lead.
Yeah.
And then we kind of come in and be there as a support. And it was amazing because it was what I saw from a leadership perspective that I really admired from this company. And it was my first boss, Carrie LaCava, and one of my senior VPs, Todd, who would always come in from Columbus. And it was that they wanted to make sure that they were always with me in the trenches, asking my thoughts, asking my opinions, asking my feedback, and making sure that they were being present as they were looking at making the larger decisions when they had these global leadership meetings and they were doing the offsites. That when they were going to those, they were taking into account what was happening day in and day out, because we were working in a small market of Des Moines, and we had markets like New York, Austin, Dallas, Chicago, all these big markets in Florida and whatnot. And we're a little Des Moines, but we were able to grow a huge business. And people were like, wait, why is Des Moines doing X, Y, and Z? And I think it's because the way our leadership for the Midwest was with Bob Schwalbach. I never forget some of the lessons he taught me, because he would come in, and every time he came in, he would work late just to see who would stay. And I would always be like, whatever I have tonight, I'm canceling, right? And I wanted to be there because I wanted to pick his brain. And his thing was always just, what am I missing? Who are working late? Why are they working late? What is the output? What is the input? What is the effect on them? And how do I give them tools, process things that allow them to still be high performers, but also knowing when they need a break, knowing when to give them time off, knowing when to say, hey, I recognize you. I appreciate you. Let me take you out to dinner. And those are the little things that I think being a servant leader is, just knowing that people that you have working for you, they just want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be felt appreciated. And that to me is one of the biggest things I teach to leaders, from corporate training into entrepreneurship, is just that your people want to be heard. And as they get bigger, it's hard, but give them an opportunity to be involved in what they're doing in day out. Ask them, hey, we want to put this process, let's test it. Of this process, what is good and what is bad? What causes extra stress on you? What can we rip away that we don't need? And we don't need process for process sake. We need process that makes sense.
Yeah, so basically the Phil Knight. Like you said about doing working late or whatever. As you know, I won't call myself a workaholic, but make decent hours. That's what you get whilst operating a company that's operational tooling being utilized in over 70 countries. It's the company, I'm the founder, I want to be there. But I don't expect the team to pull in the same amount of hours or anything.
Yeah, that's really, really important, right? Is especially as a founder and CEO, right? This company is a baby to you, right? Like, you've got your two daughters, you have three children, your two daughters, and then your company, in a sense. And it's really easy, and I see this happen a lot in my past, where founders and leaders think that every member of the organization needs to work as hard as them. And especially if you're the founder, you can never expect anybody to work as hard or love as much as you.
No, definitely not. There's one thing, though, if we talk about culture and DNA, it's like the vision, the job is done until the job is done. I think I also made it abundantly clear to the team that blatant ignorance of our customers is a red flag for me. And yeah, that's the time when we're definitely having serious conversations.
And I think that to me is why why we wanted to record this episode and talk about this, the Omniboost DNA. And I think also this was a really important episode for those who are listening to Hospitable and want to be a part of this journey with us, is to understand a little bit why we do what we do. And this podcast isn't about us. This podcast is about how does this industry as a whole become more hospitable. And we, as a culture, have seen the way travel has changed post-pandemic. There's just a lot more intensity and everyone's wanting to get out, and there's so many things happening that can negatively affect the experience. So how do we help positively affect that? And we've had some amazing guests. For those that are listening, you've heard some of the great guests. We've got amazing guests coming on from leaders like Richard Walter from Muse, Jacob Messina, Stay in Touch, Cariana Physic from Strawberry. We have architects that will be coming on to talk about how to design a space with technology in mind. But what is the idea? Like, why I can't wait, because we have some, I won't say the names yet because we have to get them confirmed on the pod, but I have two really awesome architects that I know personally that I cannot wait to ask, why do you design things in a way, especially hotels, and what is the feeling you hope to elicit? And then the question I always want to ask them, because they're thinking design, look good, feel good, it's functional space. How do you account for technology? How do you account for wires and cords? And how do you make that so seamless that you don't always know it's there, but it's there to support the staff so the staff can make sure that their guests have the best experience?
But also, it's a proper analogy what we're doing. I think the best way is for people to be unaware what Omniboost does. And actually, our biggest compliment is that people are actually totally unaware that we're taking care of interfacing and technology. Then that's the point where we really have done our job really, really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. But from a head of brand perspective, I want people to know what we're doing, right?
As a
but
brand.
Positive
as a brand,
right?
I totally agree.
But from the day to day, you go to one of the hotels that have Omniboost and you ask anyone at the front desk, they probably don't even know they have Omniboost. And that's how we want it, right? We want them to know that.
Hence the no ego part of things.
And that's really important too. When we talk about servant leadership and extreme ownership, there's a third component, and that's ego.
Yep.
And it's really easy to, especially as an American, and people look at Americans like me, big energy, big ego. Being a Dutch founder, when I did the program, I always joke. I always start like, I know I'm American, I talk big, I am big. Americans like to beat our chest. We have a little bit inflated ego. That's a bit of our culture, right? Is that we want to experience the world. They want to share wins. And more so, if you look at LinkedIn today, everyone wants to share successes and everyone looks like everything is great and gravy. But I think part of the extreme ownership, the accountability.
That's bullshit.
You want to highlight those, but you also need to make it clear that with all the good comes the bad, right?
Of course.
I love this. I had a really awesome founder who asked me what I thought joy meant, the word joy. And I was like, well, joy is anything that makes you happy. And she's like, I'm going to challenge you on what does joy mean? Joy is anything that provides you satisfaction, right? Because you can't feel joy without pain or loss. You can't feel success without losing. And so joy is anything that makes your heart full, anything that you do. And sometimes doesn't make you feel great, doesn't make you feel all tingly. It's that you are going in and day out and you're finding things that make you feel accomplished.
Yeah.
And that's doing a great job. That is doing the things that need to be done. That is knowing who we are. Those are things that we find joy in.
Yeah.
And you have to walk that line of how do we share that and share a little bit of ego and let people know what we're doing, but also internally, while it's great a little bit externally to have an ego from a brand perspective, internally we can't let that get to our heads because we can't, the more we do, the farther we get away from why we started.
Yeah. I like the chain of thought that you're sharing right now, because obviously ego has a positive way and a negative way. But if ego is determining the way that you listen to either your employee, your co-lead, or a customer, it will impact on the things that you're hearing, because then it's an I game. And the approach that we like to undertake is the we approach. Listen, be actively involved. And even if we're talking team to team member or one-on-ones, it's never about the I. And that's what we see with let's be honest, with some counterparts, it's all about I think we made it well and quite clear that our approach is never about I. It's always about we. And it doesn't mean that we're a leper or doing everything that everybody wants us to do. It's bullshit. We'll take care of ourselves. Simultaneously, doing the best job for you. We might actually deliver something else, but you think that you're asking, but we'll deliver the best situation and optimal result for you, because it's not about I.
Yeah, I think that it's really interesting because when you think as a listener, to hit this point home, when you think as the companies that you resonate with the most are those that exude a bit of the things that make you feel alive, right? When a certain shoe brand or a clothing brand, whether it's the mission, whether it's the way it looks and feel, the way that they present it, and the type of style that you're going for, and the way you want to present yourself, and it makes you feel like it's a we thing. Like, I'm part of this brand. This brand is a part of me.
That's the reason why the word partnership is so much more than just a word. And well, you've been with me yesterday on the meetings. How thrilled were we working together with the customer, and you could feel the energy flowing back and forth.
Yeah, it's very different, and I think that again, when you're in the coming from a sales mindset, there's always a time when you do have to be, and this is where expectations come in. And I always talk about at any time you come into an organization, anytime you're working with a partner, it should always be a place of we, and setting expectations of what you're willing to do and not willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's setting expectations about what you can and can't deliver on. When you walk in to a partnership meeting or a sales meeting or any type of meeting with the goal that when we leave this meeting, we're better for it. And I challenge internally all the time, why are we in these meetings? And what I've realized and through conversations with you, it's if the meeting that I'm walking into, that we have the team on, it's there for a reason, because we as a group come out whole with action, with inspiration, with a key message, with key learnings, with direction.
That's also what we always talk about. If we want to do a one-off, we would have become cab drivers or something else, but not in the vertical that we operate in.
Yeah,
it's a freaking hospitality.
Yeah, and that has its own uniqueness, and I think every industry out there is very similar. And so I challenge everyone out there listening as we look at these organizations. We have some. I will say this: we have some of the coolest partnerships in the world with the partners we have.
I totally agree. Yeah.
And some of the greatest companies, and it's just fun to learn and see where they're winning and when they're losing, when they're struggling with not, and where we can help and when we can't.
But perfect example was, for instance, COVID. A couple of our partners were hit quite hard. So you can do one thing: only take care of yourself, or take the hit together with the partner. But in the long term, you both win. That's an easy equation, isn't it?
It is, but sometimes hard. And
why?
Self-preservation.
Yeah, but isn't that
when
like very short-term type of reasoning?
Yeah, but we're humans, right? So I do think that this is where I think that mentality, and it's something that some people are born with it, but I think it's truly learned through experiential experiences, right? Is as humans, we have a basic need to self-preserve, right? That is a basic human need. And it's why humans form tribes, right? Is we grow from a nomadic people into tribes, into cities, into the culture we have today. It's because we need that security of having a family, having a group, having a tribe. And so sometimes when disaster strikes and trauma hits, it's
you
very
need to
basic.
Take care of the tribe.
Exactly. But it's very basic to think self-preservation first. But when you start thinking tribe first, and this is where you actually look at history, some of the most innovative products, companies, and things came after disaster. Mm-hmm. Because when the collective whole realizes that things need to change, true innovation happens.
Okay.
So I think that it's an amazing thing that we have to continue to preach and teach, because it's really easy, especially in a world where we're remote, we work from home, and I love remote work, and I love companies that offer it, and there are employees out there that do it, but there are also people that when they work remotely, they feel like they're on an island, they feel lonely, and they need that ability to be back into the fold. They need that ability to feel wanted, needed, supported. And this is where servant leadership, extreme ownership, and accountability
Correct.
come in, because you can have employees all over the world doing amazing things together and having never met, because if they feel that they're heard, seen, and supported,
Yeah,
that's an amazing
and
thing.
Also, we've got a couple of developers who really like to be on their own and focus on the stuff that they're doing. So you don't help them, forcing them to be in the office. Other people thrive on human interaction, so they want to be in an office. So you need to take care of a perfect combination. For alignment purposes, it does help that you actually see each other, preferably, from my perspective, once a week.
Yeah, it does. I mean, being in New York, literally and figuratively on an island, right? Sometimes I miss out on just the conversations that naturally happen while you're sitting at the desk or walking around. And that is definitely something that you have to take into account as a leader, and especially thinking about it from hospitality space. If you have 50 hotels or 25 restaurants and yet all over the country or all over the world and people everywhere, you have to take into account different time zones, things, needs, wants, and as leaders, this is why I love this. And I think the hospitality industry does this really well because the nature of the industry is to take care of the guests that we serve, like the communities that we serve, that a lot of hospitality companies or hospitality tech companies as well do this.
Correct.
Is that you have to take into account all those things. And this is where that servant leadership model really takes in. I actually got to interview Howard Bihar, who is the president of Starbucks. And he wrote the book, More Than Just the Coffee, or something like that, not about the coffee. And he was really big on the early days of Starbucks back in the day when they were kind of the rebels, because they let everyone be who they were, and they created those environments where you could come in and stay versus the coffee shop of grab a coffee and go. They wanted you to stay. They wanted you to feel well. And when I talked to him about servant leadership, he talked a lot about understanding the basic human principle that everyone is unique, and that as an organization, it's your job to create process and procedures and whatnot to make it work in a way, in a structure, but then allowing those that maybe call outside the lines, giving them the guardrails, but giving them the freedom to do that. And I think hospitality does that really well. And a lot of organizations are really starting to open that up. But it is something that when you look at like large corporate to startup, and as you grow, there's different variations of that.
I think you actually need to find the proper cadence, the proper mix in that. And ladies and gentlemen, be honest, Rob, not very long still will be alone here. So building the team in the US.
That is very true. By the time this episode will drop, we'll be well on our way to really, we established the office here. We've got a physical space. We've got some really cool partnerships happening here, and we'll be well on our way as we head into the end of the year and into next year. So I definitely know that and excited about it, but I think it still holds that it's an amazing lesson as we think about the hospitality space, and you think about how you're building teams and how you're scaling out and what you're building, that while the product is amazing, right? We have amazing products. We have partners that have amazing products. The product is an amazing thing, but it's more than about the product. It's about the people that you serve and the people who serve you, and having that as a two-way street and not a one-way street. And I think if we can continue to do that and leverage amazing technology that gives time and creativity back to humans, we're going to be well on our way to redefining and seeing an amazing seamless experience as we continue to travel the world and go on business trips or go out to eat with family, where we can focus on the moment.
Yeah, in the moment.
And not on all the other things.
Yeah, I agree. And I totally agree also with what you stated about the partnerships and the customers that we serve. You actually see the partnerships that really thrive is because of the human interaction and the willingness to serve towards each other. I totally relate and agree with that.
Yeah. So I think that is something that as we continue to evolve the podcast, evolve our company, evolve partnerships around the world, that I'm continuing excited to lead by example.
Yeah.
And as you continue to follow Omniboost journey, that you understand that we are a growing company. We aren't perfect, and we will continue to evolve and create and grow
and reiterate.
And there's a lot of things internally that the world doesn't know that we talk about, that we know that we want to focus on, and things that we want to change, and ways that we want to add more impactful ideas, more impactful initiatives, more impactful missions into the company. And that is something that I'm excited as a leadership team we get to be a part of.
The initiatives. So we still need to take care of the hoodie thingy.
we do need to take care of
I really
anything.
want to take care of the hoodie thingy.
Yeah. So we have a tradition at Omniboost that was started right after COVID, right? When you first came back to New York City.
Even before.
Well, was it before?
It was with friends in New York City. And then I saw a homeless person sitting out in the rain. So I gave him a hoodie. And truthfully, at that time, things weren't going so well, also from a business perspective. And yeah, it might have become a bit of a superstition. So it started out as a superstition, but things started to change from that moment on. And then still, every time when I'm in New York City, I give the old hoodie to a homeless person that I bought on the previous trip. But after having read the book, Book of Ideals, Marnik Scheus, I believe, he actually was talking about, okay, why not seize the moment and just jump into action, jump into gear. He started a project, the Give Me 5 project, and that resonated immediately with me. So what we spoke about, we need to do something, give something back.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that we're internally building and working on. It's super cool. And, you can look at it one of two ways. It's just one hoodie to one person. It doesn't make a big impact. With that one person, it does. Right. And it's those small steps. And I think it's really easy. What?
Or?
Well, I think that it's
Cape Town?
What? Cape Town. Or so the first time I got invited out to dinner when I was being onboarded as a strategic advisor, we like half the Omniboost team was here. It was like 10 people from Omniboost all here on a trip, visiting New York City, doing some really cool things. We invited some of the other groups around that were part of this program, the Catalyst program. And we went out to Koreatown and went to a Korean barbecue. Amazing experience. Most of them had never had it before, where they cook up the meat at the table. It's such a unique experience.
Nice.
And they were like, well, Rob, you've been here before. Why don't you lead? And so I was talking to the waiter with Mikey, and we were going back and forth like, okay, this is for 5 people. So there, boom, boom, boom. We got a couple big eaters at the table. Let's get an extra. And we were there for a while. Drinks are flowing, beers flowing, food's flowing. And they just bring out like 5 more trays. They brought out like 5 more trays of food, and all of us looked down the table and everyone looked at me, and I just got like red and was like, I look over, I was like, is that for us? And they're like, yeah. I was like, is there any way we can send that back? And like, we've already pulled it out. Like it has to get cooked. And we all were like, oh. So all of us walked out of there.
Yeah, but what did you do?
Full. Yeah. So what we did is we took all the food and so I asked if anyone wanted to take it back. Like, oh, we have a towel. I was like, okay, well, why don't I go drop it off? So on the way back, as I was walking back to the subway, dropped off food to homeless people and was able to get rid of all the food. By the time I got back to Brooklyn, I think I dropped off to about 6-7 different groups of people where they got to have some Korean barbecue. And it's just more of the fact that it was going to go to waste. So we might as well give it to somebody who needed it. And it's those, and it's the little things. Yeah, it's the little things. I think it's really easy to look at a problem and say, how do we fix it at a whole level? And that becomes daunting. And if more folks take
and the
take
story
small
is
steps.
not so much about, hey, look how great we are, but it's the way how you approach things. We could also have easily stated, throw it away or take it back. But you were considering other people, and I think that's the core or the key of the story. It's also what we like to see back within our company, and that reflects back to it's not about I.
Yeah, it's a collective whole that we as humans need each other. We crave each other. We create experiences. We crave acceptance and different things. And everyone's got a unique journey. Everyone walks their own journey, right? No one person's story is somebody else's because everyone walks their own shoes, right? So it's that uniqueness, and
so that's also why it's so dangerous to immediately judge. You never know the background story.
Exactly, and I think it's just a lesson. And as we look at it, and coming from a hospitality lens and us being in the hospitality space, it's just.
Are we in hospitality?
I think we're hospitality tech. I think we're hospitality adjacent. Cool. And I like to think that we are in a space where we can create and make experiences more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Maybe not directly, but indirectly through the partners that we serve, that those that are...
I'm sure we do. I'm actually convinced we do.
I am too. And I think that that's just part of when you create a culture and you create a team and you create an environment, you want to make sure that you highlight those things as you're building it and taking into account what people care about and allowing people at your organization to, to lead initiatives, to bring ideas to the table, give them the space and the place to put the initiative into action and let them try it out. Some things work, some things don't. And so when you allow that collective willingness to do really cool things and creativity, that's what breeds more creativity and more ideas and more success. And when that's done within the framework of why you're here to serve, it changes the game and what you're able to accomplish. And so that's something I think is really cool. And I want to leave this as we end the podcast to challenge organizations out there to continue to make impact, thinking about how you can make an impact for those that work for you internally and what impact can you give them and opportunities, but also the communities that you serve, not just your customers, because your customers are involved in a community. How do you continue to give back to that community? How do you continue to serve that community? And how do we as humans just create more opportunity, be creative, and create experiences together? And that's something that was the idea of this podcast. We wanted to talk about a little bit of the DNA and the value of Omniboost is, you follow along this podcast and follow along our journey, but also the journey of all the partners and cool people that will be on this show, is that you understand a little bit where we're coming from and why we do things like this podcast and opening up these opportunities and opening these conversations and making sure that we hold ourselves accountable to the things that we say and do internally and externally.
Totally on par, Rob. We need to hold each other accountable and do the proper reflection on ourselves as well. And once again, I also very much agree with you, is putting the challenge out there. And it's not about us being saints.
Far from
We're
it.
not. No way in freaking ... But you need to give it a good effort. Be there for your people and with your people.
Exactly.
And your customers.
Exactly. And that's what makes a huge difference. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of Hospitable. You can find us at www.omniboost.com. Kees, you can get in touch with Kees on LinkedIn. He is very, very active and engaged, and he's always down for a conversation. I'll make sure to link his LinkedIn in the show notes. I'm Rob Napoli. I'm the head of global brand and commercial U.S. partnerships lead here for the company in the States. My LinkedIn linked below. And I want to also just give a quick shout out to the Belgian Maker Chamber of Commerce for letting us, for Belsham for letting us be here and utilize their space, even with people working around in the space. I know you can't see it because we're against the wall, but there's people walking by and they're letting us record this as they're trying to go out there Friday afternoon. So I appreciate them for letting us. Exactly. It's about beer o'clock, letting us be a part of it. So thank you for tuning in. If you like the show, become a tier 1, subscribe, follow us, do all the things on wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to write us a review if you want to hook us up. If you have people you think would be a great guest on the show, if you have ideas, topics you want us to cover, let us know, because we'll be back doing some more behind the scenes Omniboost episodes as the podcast continues to grow. So definitely let us know what you want to see. Thank you all, Kees, as always. Thanks for letting me pull you away from doing a million other things to just sit down and have a conversation on camera.
Thanks again for the conversation, Rob.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody out there. Until next time, stay well.